Welcome to Camp Podcast. I am pianist Eunmi Ko, and I serve as president of the Contemporary Art Music Project, or CAMP. CAMP is an organization that promotes innovative art music and collaborates with composers and performing artists. One of many activities we do is our podcast series. Our hosts explore a wide range of topics from marginalized composers in the music history to current collaborations. Camp is currently accepting acoustic works, electroacoustic works, and installation proposals for the annual Festival Campground 23. Do you want your works to be performed by the camp performing artists, to be choreographed by Tampa City Ballet, and to be displayed at Tampa-based Gallery Temps projects? Submit your work now. Go to www.contemporaryartmusicproject.org and learn more about Campground 23. Tonight, I am your host, and I am thrilled to talk with Sean Connors, a percussionist of the Third Coast Percussion, Grammy-winning Chicago-based percussion quartet. Hi, Sean.
Hi, Eunmi. How are you?
Fine. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here and talking to me.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So I usually ask the same first question as a kind of an icebreaker. It's quite personal question, but I hope you don't
I'm
mind.
ready. No, it's all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I would like to know, and I'm sure that our listeners would like to know, what was your first encounter with music like? How was it, and why did you choose this profession to be performer, musician, and I guess furthermore, why percussion?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I can pinpoint my first encounter with music. I mean, I feel like if anybody in the world tried to think about it, it would just go back as far as your memory can reach because music's all around us all the time, right?
Right.
I did. I was always attracted to it, and I took piano lessons as a little kid, and then I grew up on the East Coast in the United States in New Jersey, and you can pick a band instrument or an orchestra instrument in fifth grade. So I picked percussion because I looked around and I saw that percussion was in all of the different types of groups. That percussion played it in orchestra and it played in the jazz band, and there was a percussionist playing in the musical pit and with the chorus and with the marching band, and I just wanted to do everything. So that's why I picked percussion. And then I think there was a steady increase in interest in pursuing it as a career. Probably in late high school, other things started slipping by the wayside, and I realized I was spending all my free time doing musical stuff. But I guess that one moment that I remember in particular that made me really fall in love with chamber music, especially, was one of my very best friends in high school was also a percussionist, and we had a very friendly, very good, competitive, a good competitive relationship. And our teacher said, "You guys should check out this piece by Bartok for two pianists and percussion."
Oh, yeah.
And there was a set of twin sisters who were also in our high school, and Souza and Sarah Wang, and they have since gone on to be concert pianists. And we played the Bartok Sonata as high school kids, and we played it at Lincoln Center. There was a chamber music competition for high school kids, and we got selected, and it was just such a thrilling, amazing experience. And I said, "This is awesome. How do I keep doing this?"
Wow, that's impressive.
I was definitely the weak link in that group. Susan and Sarah would just look at each other, and they wouldn't even count off. They would just go, dun, 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 and it would just start. I was like, oh my God.
Wow, wow, really? I mean, it's such a difficult work, and that's huge monumental work,
Yeah,
really.
my friend AJ was the timpanist in it, and it's a notoriously hard timpanist. So I got off very easy.
Yeah,
I played the
wow.
easy part in that, but it was very inspiring. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah. I think you're being modest, really. Yeah, that's amazing. So I mean, you were really we all, of course all of us were trained to be a soloist, but also I assume that you really loved chamber music, and I guess that's how you start such an ensemble like Third Coast. How did you start this ensemble?
Yeah. So all of the members of Third Coast Percussion met and interacted with each other at Northwestern University. At the time, the professor there was Michael Burritt. He's since become the professor of percussion at Eastman, where both you and I met, which is
Right.
funny. But at the time, we studied with Michael at Northwestern, and part of his pedagogy was using percussion ensemble and chamber music as a real teaching tool. Um, and in newer works for orchestra and large ensembles like wind ensemble, the percussion parts are getting better and better and more involved. But there's a several centuries worth of repertoire where the
Hmm.
percussionists just sit in the back and don't have much to do. So
Hmm.
chamber music and especially percussion ensembles where we really get to stretch out and feel like first violinists or flute players or something like that. And it was a very formative experience. I actually wasn't a founding member of Third Coast, but the group became more and more active gradually over the course of about 8 years between 2005 and 2013. And in 2013, I had subbed with the group and I was very good friends with everybody in the group. And at that time, there was a personnel change, and the group was also becoming full time.
Mm.
Everyone was going to quit their other jobs, teaching and freelancing, and invest everything in Third Coast Percussion. So I joined in 2013, and we've been full time ever since.
Oh, great. Yeah. I mean, I think every musician, almost all musicians and young musicians have this dream to start their own ensemble and, doing something and have their own group. Do you have any wisdom to share? Uh,
I'm not sure about wisdom, but I will say there's benefits and advantages of any career in the arts and any career in music. If you have your own group, you have to be prepared to do all the work that comes along with it. So, for example, the ensemble members are also administrators for the group.
mhm.
That's how we divide up the labor. We also have three full-time staff members who work with us. That's grown over the last several years. But the advantage is that then we have complete artistic control. So the
Mhm.
four ensemble members are the co-artistic directors. So that feels a little different than being a freelancer or maybe a member of an orchestra or playing in the pit of a musical or something like that, where you get to play great music and you get to perform, but you don't necessarily get to choose the music that you play or sometimes even how you play it. So I think it's worth the extra work to have your own ensemble, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you belong to orchestra or bigger ensemble and you kind of do gigs time to time, and of course you have to play the repertoire you were asked to play, and
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, things like that. So yeah, but I mean, it's a huge undertaking, and you guys did such an amazing job. I mean, now it's like probably the most important ensembles in the, at least in the United States.
Wow. Well, yeah, thanks for saying so. We really believe in it, and we really love all the different projects that we get to work on. So thanks for listening to us.
Of course, yeah. Um, well, you have had many collaborative projects. I just looked through the website, and there were really so many, and all of them looked very interesting. It was really hard to kind of pick one or two. You had this collaboration with, of course, Philip Glass um, and with the street dance group and all kinds of things. So yeah, tell us about your collaboration.
Sure. Well, the two that you mentioned,
Hmm.
talk about working with Philip Glass first. For many people who are listening to the podcast, they probably recognize the name Philip Glass. I mean, when I was in music school, his name is already in the music history textbooks. You know, he's one of those
Right.
iconic American composers. And once we had felt become very comfortable with commissioning and understood how to get support to do that sort of thing, and had commissioned quite a bit, we started really thinking about iconic living composers who had never written for percussion ensemble. And what a shame it is that there's some composers throughout history who were never approached to write a piece, and so therefore there's nothing in the repertoire by them. So we kind of made it a mission to, as best as we can, approach a wide variety of composers, people at the beginning of their career, people who are right in the middle of it, but also, for lack of a better way of explaining it, iconic composers of
Hmm.
our time. So it took many years
Hmm.
to
Oh, I'm
to
sure.
kind of track down, just even figure out how to like get in touch with Philip Glass, because he has a wonderful team, but he has a whole team working for him because his career is so vast and multifaceted. And we started actually by being inspired by his music and arranging it for our instruments, kind of getting
Hmm.
approval by his team to do that, and then sharing our arrangements with them. And that went over really well. We recorded some of those, and some other percussion ensembles started playing those. And we approached Philip and his team, what would it take to commission a new work? And
Hmm.
he was great. You know, we got a whole team of co-commissioners together, and we got a piece called Perpetuum, which is in some ways very orchestral in nature. It has three movements to it with a cadenza in the middle, like almost like an orchestral concerto,
Hmm.
and it uses uh, basically orchestral percussion instruments. So a lot of times percussion ensembles play cool and unique, sometimes considered like weird instruments or like found objects or invented instruments. But the piece from Philip used very very common percussion instruments, and it was a blast. And we toured it for a while, and it was wonderful. We had a wonderful experience. Philip is an incredibly giving musician, and he's like a lifelong gigging musician. If anyone ever has the opportunity to interact with him and talk about being a composer, especially, he's a wonderful person to talk to. And one example is that after the premiere, which he was at, he played his solo Mavrush, and then we played his new piece. He was very happy, and he said, I would like to have you guys out to my festival that I do out in Big Sur. Would you like to do this? And we were like, yes, of course. And he's like, yeah, maybe I'll ask one of my friends to write you a piece. And we were thinking like, okay, cool. We'll have to, figure out, who the friend is. And, of course we want to respect Philip. And the friend turned out to be Danny Elfman.
Oh,
And he basically called Danny Elfman and said, "Hey, there's this group. I really want
wow.
you to write a piece for them, and
Wow.
the festival will cover the commission." So
Wow.
all the work that Third Coast did to build a relationship with Philip didn't just pay off in a wonderful relationship with Philip and his team, but it also created, kind of by luck and just by happenstance, a awesome relationship with Danny Elfman, who in turn wrote us a four movement piece, and that's on our latest album.
That's amazing. I mean, that's, I guess, how you extend the collaboration and relationships and connections and everything. It's really amazing. It's a great story.
Well, yeah, thanks. I think
Yeah.
it demonstrates how I think the majority of musicians and artists that we've met really are collaborative people at their core. They want to help other artists out. They want to help musicians who aren't as far along as them. So one advice that we always give to folks who are still in school, for example, is
Hmm.
you know look at someone who is maybe doing what you would like to be doing in a few years and just ask them advice and take them out for
Yeah.
coffee or a
Yeah.
meal or something. And the worst they can say is no.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's and all these pieces that I assume that that's in your latest album, Perspectives, correct?
Yes. Yes, it
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Cool. That's really exciting. Yeah. Well, I personally am really interested in this collaboration between the dancers and the ensemble. So if you
Yes.
can, yeah.
Yeah, so the company is called Movement Art Is, and it's founded by John Bogues and Lil Buck, and they are two incredible movement artists and choreographers. People might be familiar with them without even knowing who they are. They've been on Netflix shows and danced at the
Mm,
Grammys. And Lil Buck has like a viral video of him dancing while Yo Yo Ma plays the Swan. And the styles, I should say, of dance and movement that they incorporate are varied and come from traditions of street dance from different cities in America. And we got to meet Buck and Boogs through a different project with Hubbard Street Dance, which is a modern company here in Chicago. We love them. We've collaborated with them a few times. And one of the projects that we did with them, we provided all the music. And one set of pieces by Devonte Hines was set on dancers and choreographed by John Bogues and Lil Buck, Movement Art Is. And so we approached them after that project was over and said, "Hey, would you want to do something just with us?
mhm,
Maybe something that could be on a different set of stages and get your art to a different set of audience than dance audiences." And street dance actually works great for percussion ensemble because it's
Oh yeah.
you don't need Marley floor. You don't need all the things that like a ballet company would need. Basically, you
Mm,
just need a hard surface that's flat,
mhm,
and so we developed a project, I should say, in collaboration with John Boogs and Lil Buck called Metamorphosis. Uses percussion music and dance to kind of tell the story of what it's like to try to view the world from someone else's shoes. So the dance has two different characters in it, and we've toured the piece now quite a bit. And the two dancers, the two interpreters, Quentin Robinson and Cameron Murphy, are just amazing. They're like not only artists but extremely athletic, and it's just super impressive. I don't even understand how they do half the movements that they do. But they embody two different characters: a very humanistic character, and then more of like a robot or almost Frankenstein's monster, non-human character, and they move in very dramatically different ways, based on their styles of dance, actually, that they come from. Quentin uses dances in an animatronic style, so it's like isolating different parts of your body and doing very fine motions with it. And for in a layman's terms, I'm probably saying this the wrong way, but it'd be like if you see someone doing the robot, but incredibly beautifully and super athletically. And then Cameron comes from more of a hybrid, more of a fluid style, and so they really embody those characters. And so they kind of tell a non-narrative story about interacting with each other, trying to dance like each other, and then embracing their differences. And it was all developed during 2020, virtually,
Wow.
when COVID was right in the height of things, and also when a lot of racial disparity was finally getting acknowledged in our country, and still feels very much like a art for now, and a very American concert. So we've gotten to tour it a bunch now. The music for it is there's two pieces by Philip Glass that we arranged. An original piece of music by Tiande Braxton, which was composed for the project, and then a set of 7 pieces composed by the electronic dance composer and producer and performer Jlin, and her set of pieces, Perspective, is also on our album Perspectives.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. It sounds really exciting. And yeah, I'm really surprised that it was done virtually in 2020. That's even more impressive.
That was hard.
No, I bet. I bet. I can't
The
imagine.
dancers were spread between LA and Vegas. We were in Chicago. Our lighting designer was in a different building in Chicago, because Third Coast podded during 2020. We were lucky that our partners agreed to that, but we kind of made a little pod so we could still get together. But it all came together, and we're actually Carnegie Hall was really the big inspiration and commissioner of the project for us, because they came to us and they asked us if they could help support a new project with dance for us. We said yes, of course. So we are finally going to get to bring it to Carnegie after the new year. It's been delayed, several years now, but much better late than never.
Right. Wow. Well, you mentioned about this social justice issue just right now a little bit, but I was also impressed by how you have your statement and goal of diversity and equity and inclusion in programming, and I was so glad and happy to see that, especially from such an ensemble like Third Coast Percussion, and I think it's very important that like a big ensemble or renowned ensemble doing this, really. So yeah, tell us about this issue.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been something that we have been working on steadily for a long time, and several years ago, we took stock of. It's hard to focus on all areas of diversity, because there's gender and race and age and level of education and country of origin, all this stuff. But we just wanted to measure a few things, because if you don't measure something, you can't manage it. You can't if you don't actually know what you're doing, you can't make any changes or try to improve anything. So we just took stock of the amount of music that we played by composers who, if you call us a classical ensemble, the amount of composers who we performed music that were typically thought of as underrepresented in classical music. So people of color and women identifying composers. And it was very lacking. And we are super passionate and love so much music. We realized that we needed to make a concerted effort. So our goal is to program basically the demographics of our country. So in order to represent American voices from the United States as best that we can. So our goal is to play, and we track it in minutes on stage, which is hard. There's problems with every way that you measure it, but at least this is an easy kind of mathematical way to do it. And we measure the minutes on stage by female identifying composers and BIPOC composers. And we try to have it match the same demographics of the United States. So that's, for example, that's making sure that half the music that we play is by a female identifying composer. And it has actually led to amazing collaborations, just like we knew it would.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting because it's one area that we decided to we've realized that our education program actually is one of our most performed programs, honestly, and we hadn't updated the repertoire in it for years. And so we commissioned a set of whole new pieces, all by female identifying composers, and now we have awesome additions to the repertoire that other percussion ensembles around the nation are starting to play, and we're really excited by it.
Great. I think education is so important, and I say this very often, but when I grew up, I thought all the composers are dead and white male,
Right.
And it's was really kind of eye opening to. It's not really the composers are living. They're alive, and they can be female, they can be anything, and they can be
That's exactly right. A composer can be anything.
Right. So well, you mentioned education, and I think that's also really important activity. That's one of the activities that you guys are doing. So yeah, if you can go on with your education program a little bit more, that would be great.
Sure, of course. We all are educators at heart, and we were all teachers at some point of pretty much any level, you name it. Someone in Third Coast has taught it. So we're really passionate about it. It's part of our mission statement to help foster a love of music and to create, and help mentor the next generation of musicians. So we have a lot of different education offerings. We have a kind of a flagship performance. It's an all ages show called Think Outside the Drum. And that's the show that I was alluding to, that we probably perform more than any other concert that we do. And it introduces any audience. It's usually school kids, usually between the ages of kindergarten and grade 5, but we've played it for all ages, and family concerts outside the context of school, you name it, to just basic building blocks of music. So things like melody, rhythm, timbre, those concepts, and we use we use the music of our repertoire that we love, like music by Jlin, for example, in this show. And we created interactive games for all of the audience to participate in. So, for example, to teach a concept of timbre and like different textures in music, we play a fun game where we introduce metal and wooden and skin drum sounds, and then have students try to follow along while we play really fast by touching their head, touching their shoulder, touching their stomachs when we play those different sounds, and it kind of devolves into little kids squealing and having a lot of fun. So that's our kind of our flagship education show. But we also have we have noticed, at least for our generation, that there was a lot more emphasis on performance in music education than there was in creation or improvisation. Mm-hmm. So all of us remember being in band class, but not all of us remember being ever asked to compose, for example. Mm-hmm. So we created a few projects that really try to still creativity in young students. So we have a group composition project where we've worked with students, ensembles, say a middle school orchestra or an elementary band, to create their first composition together, which is a whole bunch of fun. The one memory is that we played on a band's very first concert, and so they were playing things like Mary Had a Little Lamb and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and then their own composition, which was cool. Super cool.
Yeah.
We also have a program that we're really proud of that combines the STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and math, with arts education. We call it Making Waves, and we developed it with the University of Notre Dame. And in the program, students get to build their own instruments, learn about the science behind sound, and then compose and perform a piece on those instruments. So that's probably our most in-depth program, but it touches upon many of the things that we love about education.
Oh, great. Yeah. You also have this kind of composer training program, I think, creative partnership that you're kind of
Yes, yeah.
nursing young composers. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We
Yeah.
have a free to apply to. I'd imagine there's some composers listening right now. If
Yeah.
you're listening, you should apply to our current creative partnership. The deadline is October 31st. It has been and will continue to be free every year that we've run it. You can find out more on our website, thirdcoastpercussion.com. And basically, uh, you show us a little bit about your music and then make a pitch. Like, what would you do with Third Coast Percussion? What piece would you
Hmm.
make with us? And we typically work with about 2 to 3 composers over the course of a full season. So a lot of times we found that with like a reading session or a call for scores, composers don't really get to play around or edit that much. They get like a really strict deadline, and they might have one rehearsal, or they have to just write a piece and send it to a group without any feedback. And it's not a very collaborative experience, which we don't like. So it's spread out over a full season, and we're really happy with the program. We've been doing it for almost 10 years now, and it's fostered some of our closest friendships and professional collaborations. So everybody check it out. And the worst case scenario is you send us your music and we all listen to it and we get to know you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's about time that we can kind of wrap up and listen to some music, which we always like. And we will listen some selections from your latest album. So tell us about the album Perspectives, right?
Yes, yeah. So the story of the album, if there is one, is that all of the different music creators whose music is represented on the album took a really different approach to how they create music. So we're gonna hear, I think maybe 2 to 3 selections. It's up to you guys,
Three.
but three, great.
Yeah. Three. Yeah.
And 2 of them we've actually already touched upon. One of them is going to be a movement from Danny Elfman's
Mm-hmm.
new quartet, which in some ways was the most traditional form of creation and collaboration. We sampled a lot of our instruments. He had a clear idea of the piece he wanted to write. He sent us some drafts. We tested it out. We made revisions and workshopped it that way. But we also worked with Jlin, who is an incredible composer, but she doesn't work in notated format. She composes entirely in her DAW, digital audio workstation.
Mm-hmm.
So she came and spent 2 days with me sampling pretty much every instrument in our studio.
Mm-hmm.
It was really, really fun. And then she went home and she made um, uh, basically 7 complete compositions. And then gave us license to orchestrate them, basically, and in some cases arrange them, kind of get the spirit of what she wrote, and then try to put it on our instruments. And so there's 7 pieces in total. We're going to hear one called Derivative, which Rob from the group took lead in transcribing, and this one represents really like a note for note attempt at transcribing her piece. So there wasn't a lot of arranging in it. Most of the work was put into like, oh my gosh, how are we going to translate these amazing, awesome electronic sounds into acoustic sounds and make it not take up, an entire stage? Because for example, I think in this track there were like, I don't know, something like 10 hi-hat stems alone, all
Wow.
sounding different and super cool and unique. And actually, that was the single, which is kind of funny to say for our group, but that's the single from the album. So we released that first before the whole album came out. And then representing a completely different way of creating music, our friends Flutronix and we composed a piece together, which is the first time that Third Coast Percussion has ever tried to co-compose with an outside group. Everybody in Third Coast composes, and we've done co-composing together as a group, but we've never done it with anybody who wasn't a member of Third Coast Percussion. So it was our first venture into it. It was a ton of fun. It was very challenging, and there were a lot of of course, amazing and strong opinions in the room. But I think we narrowed it down into a cool short 3-minute piece, and we're going to be touring with Natalie Joachim and Alison Langsall from Flutronix after the new year, playing some stuff together. So we'll hear one track from Rubix, which is the piece that we co-composed.
Great. Well, thank you so much for talking to me, and it was so nice to see you virtually.
Yeah.
After so many years. And it's always great to follow the Third Coast Percussion and how great work you do. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Eunmi.
Thank
And
you.
everybody should submit a work to the camp call for scores. It's such a wonderful opportunity.
Thank you.
Either an installation or an acoustic work, or any of those 3 categories. Everybody listening should check that out.
Thank you so much. So we'll listen to Jlin, Derivative, Danny Elfman, Percussion Quartet Movement 1, and Flutronix and Third Coast Percussion's co-composition Go from Rubix. Support us by donating. You can go to our website, www.contemporaryartmusicproject.org, and simply click the donate button. Help us continue our podcast, festival, and other exciting projects. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time with more music.